When you really think about it, pretty much every significant technological, medical, scientific advancement we've had throughout the history of mankind has been based on research and research activities. It's because of the efforts of people like you that the species has gotten as far as it has. And we're looking to you to keep us moving forward. Now, selfishly, from the NASA perspective, we are planning on putting the next man and the first woman on the moon in the year 2024. That's just 4 years through our Artemis program. Next month is going to mark 20 years of humans living off planet, living on orbit. We have been permanently living aboard the International Space Station for almost 20 years now. We have a lot of experience in that environment, but we have very little experience living on the surface of any other planets. Our Apollo program gave us about 11 days total of experience working on the moon. Now, we're planning to go to the moon, and we're planning to go on to Mars. In order to do that, we're going to need people like you to do a lot of research for us and help us keep our crews alive, safe, and functioning. We need research into the life sciences, even aeronautics still, in situ resource utilization, dust mitigation, power generation. The list just goes on and on. And all of this stuff doesn't just benefit us in trying to get to the moon and Mars. All of this feeds right to Earth and helps this planet. So I encourage you all to continue pursuing research and looking forward to what you guys come up with. And even if you don't come to NASA, find your passion and make the world a better place. Okay? So with that, Dr. Gates, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. I really appreciate those words and really motivating our students to want to go on into graduate studies. That's what our focus is. And this work is really funded by the Computing Alliance of Hispanic Serving Institutions, as Bertha mentioned, funded through the NSF. This summer, we ran a virtual REU program, so welcome to all of you that joined that program. And I know many of you have been working on research throughout the years, or maybe you just started this summer as some of the others. I wanted to really focus today on looking at a variety of graduate research funding programs. When you look at these fellowship programs, they really have been created to help ensure the vitality of the human resource base. And by that, we mean the importance of bringing in students who have really different perspectives. The diversity of your experiences, your knowledge are really important to build strong research programs. So we want to, the GRFP, the NASA programs, and many others are trying to recognize those that are doing outstanding work and provide you with the financial aid you need to be able to go through a graduate program. It's a great investment in our country. As Ronnie mentioned, the focus of this talk today is to help you put together a competitive application submission. There are many opportunities. We've listed those here on the slide. Claudia will be putting them in the chat. NASA has excellent opportunities, so does the NSF. When you go to the NSF site, it also provides you with a lot of the information I'm going to be talking to you about today. But I want you to know that there's so many more fellowship opportunities that are available, including those who are for international students. Even if you're not doing specific research, do your research. There are opportunities that you can get through the web. But what I hear a lot from agencies is that there are not enough applications that are coming, especially from those students who are from underrepresented groups. So let's get started. One of the most important things that you have to do when you look at a fellowship opportunity is study the guidelines. This is critical. You have to look very carefully to make sure you're eligible. And there's, take every element that you have to qualify for, be qualified for, and look at that carefully. If you're unsure, then send a message and find out, get clarification. It helps to create a checklist. It helps to create deadlines because it's a complicated process. There's a number of things that you have to put together, including getting your transcript sent in time and also getting reference letters. Almost every fellowship opportunity asks for reference letters. And so there's a timeline for that those to be sent from your reference letter writers. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute. When you look at the GRFP, and this is where I'm talking about, you know, the level of detail that you have to pay attention to. The GRFP is really looking for those students who are pursuing research-based master's or PhD programs in one of their supported fields. So you have to go to the application on the website and look at what fields are eligible. You have to be enrolled in an eligible program by fall 2021. And it has to be a U.S. graduate institution with a campus in the United States. So you need to be thinking about what program are you going to be applying for. And again, once you get the GRFP, you can switch the program that you're going to study at. You have to have not completed no more than 1 academic year of full-time graduate study or the equivalent. This is the one that's very tricky. So you could be in a master's or PhD program right now and be eligible to apply. You could be a senior getting ready to join a program. You have to be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or a permanent resident. A new guideline or eligibility requirement for the GRFP is that you can only apply once. In previous years, you could put in multiple applications. So this is really important for you to think through. Do you feel that you're competitive now, or can you wait a year to apply? That's really important to think about. The GRFP is a very prestigious award. It pays $34,000 plus $12,000 cost of education stipend. And it also allows you to apply for other support. So visit the website. It's you're going to be applying through the NSF FastLane website. So you need to look at that website because it really has a lot of information that you have to input. Note that for computer science, the deadline is October the 20th. If you're in other fields, chemistry, biology, mechanical engineering, there are different deadlines. So you need to immediately go to the GRFP website to find out when your deadline is. Nevertheless, the deadline is very close. What we recommend is that you start putting an application together in the summer, in August, June, July, August, and then allow time for critical review and feedback. Now, you have time to still put that together, but if you're thinking about applying on this round, I'm going to suggest that you start today, starting to put together the information. You will have to input personal information, your transcripts, any other experiences that you have, what graduate program you're going into. You need to start putting down the faculty, which is what we're going to recommend, their letters of reference and whatever statements that you have to put in. So let's start with the letters of recommendation, because this is really important. When you think about who your references are, they really need to be people who have supervised your research projects or have been involved in your academic program. Character references have less weight. A character reference would be maybe a pastor, priest. It could be someone who runs a nonprofit that you work with in the summer. You really need to be able to have someone who could speak to your research potential. So if you did an internship at NASA, and there's someone who could speak to your potential as a researcher at NASA or at, let's say, Google, or if it's a faculty member, those carry a lot of weight because they're going to have to speak to the criteria that is used to actually award these kinds of fellowships, and that is intellectual merit and broader impact that we're going to cover in a minute. Now, when you choose a letter writer, you need to approach that person And you need to ask them if they can write a strong letter of recommendation. So a lot of times what we see, and I have reviewed for NSF, what we see is that the letter writer talks very generally about the applicant, and that does not carry weight. We want someone that could really speak to your attributes. So you may think that the faculty has a positive image of you, but you don't know until you ask them. I've had people come to me and ask me if I could write a strong letter when I was chair of computer science. And I really didn't know them. And I said, you know, I really can't because I haven't had experience working with you. It has nothing to do with your capabilities. It has to do with the exposure I've had to learn about your character and about your intellectual capabilities and your ability to do research in general. So once you get someone that says, yes, I know you well, I can write about your contributions, I'm willing to do it, then you need to provide them with the guidelines. When you look at the GRFP at NSF, it has very specific guidelines. It does not want someone to talk about your accolades only. They want you, the applicant, to address intellectual merit. What is the merit of your research? So they need to know what research project you're working on. And then they need to know what are the broader impacts of the work that you're doing. And we'll talk about what those two things mean in a minute. But providing them with the guidelines and then sharing your goals, your accomplishments, your resume, description of your research is very important. So provide them with that information, provide them with the resume, and provide them with 3 to 5 weeks for those letters to be written. Now, in the case of the GRFP, those letters are due after the due date. So while we said the due date's October 20th, they are given additional time to actually put together their letter of recommendation. I believe, and I'm sorry I didn't look it up, you need at least 2, as I recall, at least 2 letters, maybe 3. So it's always important to ask for more letters just in case a faculty member is not able to submit it on time for some reason. And I want to tell you, please, if you have any questions, put them in chat. I'm going to ask Claudia to call them out before I move on. So please put any questions that you have, and I'll be happy to answer them as we go along. So let's talk a little bit about the statements. Now, every fellowship has a little bit different requirement on the essays that they require. So one of the things I want to again emphasize is that there's some similarities in what you're going to be asked to do, and but every fellowship that you're going to apply to, and I urge you to apply to more than one, is that you should tailor it to what the fellowship is asking for. So if it's NASA, it may be more around NASA areas of interest. If it's NSF, it's much more general. Someone may be asking more about social impact. So be sure you read the fellowship application and tailor your essays, your personal essays to what they are asking for. And I want to say that almost every opportunity will ask for a personal essay. NSF asks for personal, relevant background and a future goal statement. And these are typically 2 pages, maybe 3 pages. And what NSF is looking at, because you have to have an essay around what I just mentioned, as well as a research essay. The important thing is that these 2 essays should really complement each other. You should be integrating what you are talking about into a common theme, so that when they're reading your essays, they flow together. Again, I'm going to emphasize that even though you're talking about your personal and future goals, you still have to, for the NSF application, talk about intellectual merit and broader impact. And we have a whole exercise around that. Unfortunately, today we're not able to give it to you, but as I'll I'll talk about later, Kasi will be willing to work with you on these things. Please know that you're going to have to write multiple drafts. You're going to come up with your initial draft. You may review it and go over it, but you have to put it down, revisit it. You need to find others that can review it, and get in, really understand that you're going to have to write this multiple times. It's really hard to put this together. So allow that time for you to review it and re-review it. So when you look at the personal statement that you have to put together, what it's basically asking you to do is to talk about how do you envision graduate school for preparing you for a career that allows you to contribute to expand scientific understanding and broadly benefit society. That's the major thing. Because this is a personal statement, you should be talking about your life experiences. A lot of the personal statements that I've read that have been successful talk about how the person was motivated by the work that they did in middle school or in high school, the experiences that they had maybe with the science fair, or maybe working with a very engaging teacher or faculty member. You have to lay that groundwork. You should be talking about your personal experiences. And we're going to talk about this a little bit in a minute about how do you really sell yourself while still talking about your goal of going to graduate school. The motivation about why you're going to graduate school, the motivation about why you're interested in a particular topic and how that topic is important to the government agencies, to advancing knowledge, and then how what you want to do is going to benefit society. So I mentioned this word, this concept of selling yourself. When you craft a personal statement, it's not time to be humble and not talk about what you've accomplished in your life. You really have to think about the work that you've done and sell it. Describe your interest in the opportunity, and then your research areas. Describe how this fellowship will contribute to your career goals. It may be that you are first in your family to graduate, and you don't have the financial income to go on to graduate school. You should talk about those challenges that you face in your life. You want to differentiate yourself from others. You could do that around the leadership skills that you have or some unique characteristics, your ability to work in teams. Maybe you did some work with, let's say, with your, providing service within the community, or maybe with your church, right? You did particular things where it showed that you're a leader. It shows that you're a team player. You want to be able to talk about the things. Maybe it's even about you being a problem solver, right? What challenges have you had? How have you overcome this? So you want to describe personal and individual strengths that make you a qualified applicant. Ronnie, I don't know if you have anything to add to this when you think back about your own how you have sold yourself to get into the position you have today.
Sure. So that is always a touchy subject because a lot of us do not like being talking about ourselves, selling ourselves. It's a very uncomfortable thing to do sometimes. But ultimately, it's something you have to do, especially when you first send in an application like this, right? You need to let them know, yeah, what your skills are, what technical accomplishments you've had, like Dr. Gates been talking about in the other research you've done. But the person reading this application is also trying to hire a person. It's trying to bring somebody in. They got to get to know you a little bit. So, when I had to apply for my senior executive position, we had to write up this very, very lengthy application. And I swear by the time I was done, I felt like I needed to take a shower, because you have to sell yourself to the point that you're a little uncomfortable, which is just reality. That's because, especially when you're not sitting in front of the person, when you're just giving them that piece of paper, they need to have a reason to want to come talk to you, to want to bring you on board.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a balance between overselling yourself and selling yourself, and make sure that you keep that balance. The reference letters, reference letter writers will be really the ones that are going to verify, if you will, and add on to what they see as your potential. And so sharing what you have shared with them is important. And then, you know, again, it's always being very straightforward. What we've done at CASI is we created a workshop, a worksheet rather, for you to start thinking about your goal statement. So we say, what is my educational goals? What are my career goals? What do I hope to accomplish in my life? What is the opportunity, and how will this opportunity help you reach your goals? Really important that you think about that. And then how do your goals align with the opportunity? So remember, I said you have to look at the opportunity, read it carefully, and make sure that what you hope to accomplish aligns with what the fellowship opportunity is. And those goals may be slightly different depending on the opportunity. So then we lay out here a lot of different questions that we are asking you. Claudia has put into the chat a link to the Google Drive where you can find this document. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to be thinking about this, maybe a little bit less time because we're running a little bit late, but a couple of minutes for you to look over this document and think about what you might put down. I also want to say that when we do this live, we have students share their statements with each other, because your friends, your colleagues can turn around and say, hey, wait a minute, you didn't put this down and you didn't write this. It's important, I think, a lot of times to talk about your experiences as being bilingual or trilingual, if that's the case.
Anne, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We
Yes,
have some questions.
Great.
The Google Drive link is not viewable to the audience. It's only viewable to us. So we can share it later by sharing the slides.
Okay.
Also, we have some questions from the audience. Number one is, if you apply for the GRFP as an undergraduate and don't get it, can you reapply for PhD GRFP when you're in a master's program?
No, the answer.
Or, no? Okay.
No.
Okay. Or
No.
if you apply for a master's GRFP and then later decide to go on to a PhD, can you apply again for a PhD?
No. Yeah, they treat graduate school as one entity. And that's my understanding. That was the rules. I don't believe they have changed. If the representative from NSF is here and would like to contribute to that, please do. But my understanding is that once you're in graduate school, even though it's the master's, you can't reapply. So you really have to think through this when you want to apply and when you feel you're the best, the most competitive.
All right. Second question is, you mentioned the letters of recommendation aren't due at the same time as the application.
No,
are they due later?
They're due later.
When are they due?
I'll have to look it up for the GRFP. I believe it's at least 1 week to 2 weeks later. So it'll be due sometime in early November. You will, I believe you need to put down the names of the reference writers. So if you put down, let's say you put down 5 names, only 3 respond, that's fine. And they need to have a minimum of, and again, I'm sorry I didn't look it up. They have to have a minimum of 2 or 3 letter writers. If there's a faculty member in the audience that can look that up really quickly and put in chat, I would appreciate it. But you can go to the link that we provided earlier to the GRFP, and all of the information is there.
And last question is, does this application, the GRFP, applies only to graduate students?
No, you could be a senior. You could be, as long as you're starting graduate school in the fall of 2021.
Thank you. We had one more question, but I think it has been answered. They were asking how many letters in total. 1 letter recommendation and 1 motivation letter is enough?
No, well, I don't know, Claudia, you might go into the link and look. There's an area for reference letters, and I believe it'll say there. I didn't look at it yesterday, and it changes from year to year, so I don't want to tell you how many, but in the past, I believe it was 3. So, but you always, all 3 letters really should be around people who can talk about your capabilities to do research, even if they don't know about their research, but they know about your performance in class, how you worked on projects, how you solve problems, how you're inquisitive, how you, just talking about your ability to communicate, oral and written communication skills, work in teams. When we have to look at intellectual merit and broader impact, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. When you're selling yourself, again, I'm going to repeat this, I put it in black and white, highlight the results and how activities have prepared you for graduate studies. And again, when we talk about activities, certainly, you have a leg up if you have done a research, have had a research experience. Everyone on this call, I believe, has a research poster. So all of you are going to be more competitive than others who do not have those experiences. So please note how important that is. If you have published, so you want to talk about presenting your poster, that's an important thing to really promote. If you have a publication, please talk about that. Team experiences are important. If you worked in a team and have a team research project, you want to talk about what your contribution was. Talk about your career plan and what influenced your idea, your desire. If your career plan is to go into academia, if your career plan is to go into research and development, if you want to go and work at NASA, you need to talk about that. And talk about what influenced you. It may be the talk that you heard from Ronnie that really got you motivated to go in, work at NASA. Talk about those personal experiences. Even if they seem small to you, they're really important to be able to reflect that. For those of you that heard the talk from Dr. Faye Cobb-Payton from NSF, she talked about a student who approached her about artificial intelligence because his experiences in working, or his experiences where he saw people who looked like him were excluded from these automatic tools that are AI driven. And so he wanted to go and do research around bias and how that influences tools that are around artificial intelligence. I mean, it's a very powerful story. So think about the things that motivate you. It may be around health disparities. It may be around things that you see in your community that could be better. Address how your activities address the intellectual merit and broader impact. When you go to the research statement, this is where you have to work with a researcher at your university, or if you, for this year, it's really too late for you to approach someone, but I would suggest that if you're not working with a researcher, I guess all of you are, technically speaking, since you're doing a poster. If you have a year before you want to apply, you really should use this year to be thinking heavily and deeply about your research statement. Now, your research statement is not something that you have to adhere to if you get the award. So the award will be announced in the spring, and at that time you may have found something that excites you even more. And you can change your statement, your research direction. Once you have the award, you have the award. You can change the university, you can change your mentor. But what I put here is that you need to consult with your mentor, you need to state the research problem. And one of the important things is, why is it important? Why should people care about the work that you're doing? What is its significance? What is the motivation? So you should document any previous work that you've done. If you haven't done work, that's fine. If you have work that's in progress, in other words, you're getting ready to write a paper, you're going to be submitting it, talk about that. Summarize the preliminary work that has been done in your area of interest very briefly, because the research statement, I believe, is no more than 2 pages. So it has to be very succinct. You should be talking about the research questions or hypotheses, your methodology that you're going to use. And one of the things that NSF always cares is that if you're proposing particular research, do you have access to the resources to do that research? Maybe there's a special equipment that you need. Do you have access to that? It may not be at the university. It may be that there's a collaboration with another university to provide you time on that equipment, but you do have to address that. And again, I'm going to go back to intellectual merit and broader impact. Before I move on, we have maybe 2 minutes. Ronnie, if you have anything to add here about research.
Yeah, I think that some of the things you touched on that I think are really very important for everybody to recognize is that, again, the person is looking for the individual. So when Dr. Gates talks about what's important to you, why is this research important? Make sure that they understand that, because it helps them also understand what's important to you. When I think of the things that NASA has done, and sometimes people say, oh, why are we spending this money? You look at all the research you've done into medicine, into making airplanes safer, into environment, the satellites we have on orbit now looking down on Earth to track just these 2 hurricanes that are developing, right? But there's so much research that we do that is fundamental to humanity, that looking at curing illnesses, taking care of the planet, making travel safer, that's really, really significant stuff. And what I always like to tell people when I talk to them is, don't just do research that you don't feel passionate about.
Right.
Do it for a noble reason, and do it like, if you're going to do research on how to design a better AI for cars to drive by themselves, don't do it just to make a better car. Do it so that parents can get home to their kids safely at the end of the day. Right. Have that noble purpose behind it, and you're going to find that you can do amazing things, because you're going to have a real drive. And that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, because there are I would say thousands of applications. You have to stand out. And so you have to really, the passion you have because of your experiences is what really will help things, help your application stand out. I'll read, sometimes there's a medical, reason why someone is interested in looking for a better way to do something, because they've had experiences with their family members getting sick, and recognizing that there were some deficiencies in how they were treated, or treated medically is what I mean. It may be around user interfaces. It could be, there's so many things, but it's really around that passion that really makes a difference. One of the proposals that you should be thinking about as undergraduates is the Goldwater scholarship. And I reviewed that last year. There really is a high need for those to apply for that in all areas, especially computer science. But I think that, again, when I read those scholarships, the ones that ended up being awarded were the ones that really had a personal story attached to why they are interested in research and making a difference. So let me go over. We only have a couple of minutes now, like 4 minutes, but the review criteria. Again, it's going to be based on your strength of your academic record. But I'm going to say that for the GRFP, if your GPA is a little bit lower than what would normally be the GPA that's awarded, you have an opportunity to talk about why your GPA was low. It may be because someone became ill in your family and you had to balance that, or you had to go to work while you were going to school. You were a freshman and you weren't taking school seriously. Whatever it is, you have an opportunity to talk about that. And then because they're looking at your transcript, they can see that in your junior, senior year, you really did excel. So don't be discouraged if you think your GPA is not where it should be. But it's really, the reviewers are asked to take this holistic view of the applications. And everything that you're putting together in your packet helps them do that. We look at what is the potential of the activity. This is going to really addresses both intellectual merit and broader impact, but you're looking at how is it going to advance knowledge and understanding? And I always go back to the simple statement of why do you care? I also want to say before I forget that the application, the research plan, your whole packet is being read by people who may not be in your field. So you should be writing it for someone who's in STEM, but maybe someone who does not have deep knowledge. Not to say that you should go away from the technical jargon, but try not to use it too much. Try to put it in very straightforward terms. They're asking, how does it benefit society? Broader impacts. And a broader impact, if you're from an underrepresented group and you look at the numbers of females that have PhDs or masters, or the number of males that have PhD or masters who are Hispanic or from African American, Native American, that is benefiting society. And you need to talk about what you intend to do to increase the number of students, let's say, that go into STEM. That could be part of your statement. To what extent are your activities creative and transformative? We also look at whether you should be looking at whether what you have put together is well reasoned, well organized. Do you have a plan for making sure that you can know whether you're successful? So this is looking at your research plan should be talking about how are you validating your work? What experiments are you running? Whatever from the research perspective, how do you know you were successful? They also want to look at how well you're qualified. That's your personal statement. And do you have adequate resources? I already mentioned that. So when we look at the review criteria, again, this bigger picture is, will you benefit society? Will your achievements, or do you have a specific desired societal outcomes? The outcomes that you should be thinking, I already mentioned on broader impacts, full participation of minoritized people, individuals, improving STEM education. So if you're doing outreach activities, if you're planning anything that reaches out to your community, you're engaged with your community, then please include that. Those are so important. And then so forth. You're going to have access to this. You can be able to read it. But it has to be, your proposal has to be well written, it has to be organized, it has to follow the guidelines, it has to be a unified approach and present a research plan as we described earlier. I'm going to emphasize the importance of reviews. Reviews are critical for putting together a competitive application. So plan to write, rewrite, and rewrite. And what I wanted to say as we put up this poll is that if you write your name and email in the chat, and you would like, please write your name and email in the chat. If you would like CASI to work with you on your application and provide guidance. What we do at CASI is that if we're given a packet, we'll identify faculty to comment on it and give you feedback so that you can improve your application packet. So please use that service. you can contact Claudia Casas as well. We will also be able to mentor you on any of the parts as you're putting together your packet. So I think I'm 1 minute over. And so with that, I want to thank you. Please consider going to graduate school. It is so important for our nation to have your voice.
We have a couple of questions, Anne.
Okay.
One of them is, what is one good way to ask a possible recommender if they can write you a strong letter of recommendation?
I think you just say it just like that. You say, I am applying for a GRFP. This is what the GRFP is about. Would you be able to write me a strong letter of recommendation? Here are the guidelines. So most faculty should know what it is, but I just would be very straightforward.
That's all.
Okay, again, please consider graduate studies. I think it's really important to advance your career, to advance the capabilities of our nation to remain #1 in STEM fields. So thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing from you. I don't know if we can leave the poll open or if we have to get off now. I'll turn it over to Bertha.
Thank you, Dr. Gates. Great presentation. The people can continue to respond. This session will end in 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Any closing remarks, Ronnie?
Well, thank you for letting me join you today, Dr. Gates. I enjoyed this, and I learned a little bit more about applying for these if somebody comes to ask me about it more specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Gates, I love the way you close this out. Go do this for not just yourself, but for our nation.
Yeah.
You know, and coming from NASA, I always like to put the bigger picture on there. You know, what we do, we're doing for humanity.
Yeah.
So go make a difference in the world.
I would say so many things that NASA has done has been for the greater good of our nation. I always remember that Tang came from NASA.
Yes, it did.
And there's many more, right? There's many more things, but
Yeah.
I always remember that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so thanks everyone. Go out, good luck with your poster sessions. Can't wait to see the results.
Thank you, everyone, and continue to enjoy the GMIS virtual conference. This session has ended.
Thank you.